Amanda, you're muted.
Good way. Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to NTIA's Public Wireless Supply Chain Innovation Fund's second listening session. As we are getting folks out of the waiting room and into the event, I am going to go ahead and start the meeting today. So I'd like to thank you all very much for making the time this morning to come and participate and to share your thoughts on the direction of the Innovation Fund. We know your time's valuable, but we really appreciate the input and recognize the need for the close working relationship with our stakeholders and industry partners. So thank you again. I'd like to remind everybody that we are recording today's event. So following the event today, we are going to post the event on our NTIA Innovation Fund website. So feel free to go there following the event if you'd like to go back and take a look. So I'd like to start off today's event by introducing the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Communications and Information, Sarah Morris. She's going to be providing remarks for the opening for today's event. So Sarah, over to you.
Making sure I'm unmuting myself as well. Thank you, Amanda. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. We're really excited to discuss with all of you the next steps for the Wireless Innovation Fund. Today's session is designed to collect input to inform the future of the Innovation Fund grant program. We're going to discuss ongoing barriers to Open RAN adoption, anticipated use cases, and what outcomes industry is interested in seeing. But I want to take a step back and talk a little bit about why this matters. We all depend on our phones for our daily life. I walk around with 3 of them currently at any given time. But without a secure supply chain for network equipment, these devices and everything we use them for is at risk. American leadership in innovation and technology has been critical to our economic and national security for decades, and our success in leading the world in wireless telecommunications is a key component of that. But that success is not guaranteed. And the Wireless Innovation Fund was born out of the need to increase the resiliency, diversity, and security of the wireless equipment ecosystem at home and around the world. I'm proud to say we're making a lot of progress in meeting these needs. NTIA has already awarded more than $140 million to 17 projects in our first round of funding. I joined EchoStar last week in Wyoming to celebrate the opening of an incredible testbed facility we funded in our first round. And I look forward to more ribbon cuttings like that coming soon. Also in May, we opened up our second round of funding, unlocking $420 million to drive open radio unit commercialization and innovation. I'm excited to share that we expect to begin making radio unit awards very soon in November. And then we will continue to make those awards as months go on. In all, that's more than $560 million dedicated to supporting the development of open and interoperable networks. But there is more to come, and that's where you all come in. Your input was invaluable in our development of NOFOs 1 and 2. For example, we funded testing facilities in the first round because we heard about the need for testing to prove interoperability ahead of commercial deployment. And then in NOFO 2, we focused on radio units to address concerns we heard about the cost and technical performance of open radio units. So today, we're calling upon you again to help inform future funding rounds. And there's a few topics that are top of mind for discussion, including ongoing barriers to Open RAN adoption, including technology gaps and market challenges, and opportunities to address those barriers. Anticipated use cases for open and interoperable networks in public and private 5G networks, and desired outcomes from industry, including relevant trials, deployment models, or proofs of concept. So I'm excited to hear what comes up around all of these topics. I encourage you all to dive in and any other areas you want to bring to our attention for future funding rounds. It will take all of us working together here and going forward to make this vision of secure, resilient, and trustworthy wireless networks a reality. So thank you all again for joining. And with that, I will turn everything back to Amanda.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah. Really appreciate you making the time and making remarks to kick off today's event. So again, thank you all for making time to come today to our second listening session and to gather your input and thoughts on the direction of the Innovation Fund. So appreciate that opportunity. So if we could go 2 slides in. Okay, great. So before we go ahead and get started and open the floor to folks, some housekeeping remarks for everybody on the call today. So again, a reminder that we are recording today's event. We are going to be posting this session on our website, ntia.gov, the Innovation Fund, following today's event. There is going to be closed captioning available for those of you that are using the Teams app. In terms of folks getting their comments in, we would ask that everyone use the Teams function to please raise your hand. Folks are calling in from their phone, please press *5 to raise your hand. And if you could, please keep your hand raised until the moderator calls on you. That way we can keep track and make sure everybody gets their comments in an orderly fashion. So another reminder, everybody, if you could, please stay on mute until you are called upon. To unmute yourself, if you're dialing in by phone, please press *6. We're going to ask that once you are called on to provide comments, please identify yourself, state your name and your organization. And we're going to be limiting remarks to 5 minutes maximum. So we've got a lot of interest in today's event, which is fantastic. But we also want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to get their comments heard by our team. So we're going to have timers and make sure folks are sticking to their time limit. If for some reason you're not able to get your comments in as part of that discussion, please use the chat function to submit your comments. So those of you that are in attendance today, hopefully you saw that we've queued up 3 discussion topics for today. We've allotted 40 minutes for each of those discussion topics. And in the interest of time, to make sure that we're able to get to everybody's comments, we are going to adhere to a strict timeline of 40 minutes per topic. So hopefully we get through most everybody's comments per topic area with that given timeline. We've also allotted 15 minutes at the end of today's discussion to open the floor to any additional topics or comments that we might not have covered as part of today's event. So with that, and without any further ado, if we could move on to the next slide, and I will hand it over to Mr. Brad Hunt, who is going to introduce our topic area 1 for today's discussion. So Brad, over to you.
Thanks, Amanda. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining. I echo Amanda's sentiments. We're excited to get your inputs. A couple things that I would like to reiterate. One, that this is a listening session. This is not a Q&A session, so we want to hear from you. We understand that you likely may have some questions as well. There are mechanisms to submit questions through the NTIA inbox so that we can get those addressed. But just to reiterate, that's not the point of this particular session. I would also encourage you all to give us your opinions, give us your thoughts on these questions through a lens of understanding where we are thus far. That having been said, right, we've issued NOFO 1, that was on T&E and R&D. NOFO 2 is all about commercializing the RUs. So, think of it from a point of time, those having been addressed, where can we go forward? So with that having been said, let's go ahead on the topic, which is ongoing barriers to Open RAN adoption, including, for example, technology gaps and market challenges, among others, and what opportunities you see to address those barriers. Please raise your hand, and I will call on you in the order in which you come in. Okay, it looks like we have John Baker. John, what is your comments? You're on the clock.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah. So introduction, my name is John Baker. I lead the Open RAN team at Mavenir. I'm also a board member of ORPC and co-chair of the industry engagement group for the ORAN Alliance. And, my comments this morning are really based on Mavenir's comments and doesn't necessarily reflect the opinion of the ORAN Alliance. So Mavenir, is a pioneer of Open RAN and clearly a zealous advocate for its global advancement. Grateful to NTIA for your leadership and thoughtful approach and partnership in helping advance Open RAN and to make the US a leader in 5G and beyond. We appreciate you convening this session today. In response to the questions, I think there's three key barriers that really have still continued to slow the pace of Open RAN. The first is that, legacy suppliers continue to provide proprietary solutions and, essentially calling them open. Even if they are virtual, they're neither open nor interoperable. Really what comes down to open means across a minimum set of defined ORAN Alliance interfaces and not just the 7.2 interface for front haul. Because of these definitions that are being sort of manipulated in the marketplace, we risk again lock-in of entire networks for a generation and stalling the progress and many benefits that so many of us, including US government, seek to achieve. We spent years proving that Open RAN is equal and is not better than proprietary solutions. And then, we need the industry to just agree that Open RAN is here to stay, and encouragement from NTIA that, open up all interfaces as defined in the ORAN Alliance as a way forward. The second challenge for Open RAN advancement is the unworkable system for project financing assistance. The US assistant agencies present insurmountable hurdles for small and medium-sized companies who self-finance projects and thus have a highly leveraged balance sheet. Meanwhile, allied nations have offered favorable financing solutions and tax incentives for suppliers located in their countries. Small reforms are needed to help US companies better compete against foreign suppliers, including untrusted suppliers in China. And then thirdly, that the US telecom operators need to recognize and support a US telecom supplier base. These are the main 3 points that we've seen that are holding back the advancement of Open RAN. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, John. Really appreciate that feedback. Let's move on to next in line. We have Alan Gatherer or Gatherer. Alan, apologies if I misrepresented your name.
Hi, no, it's just Gatherer like it looks actually, and okay. No one ever can get that. It's too simple. And I'm from Cirrus 360. I'm a founder and the CTO here at Cirrus. I'd like to actually add some color to John's remarks, which I very much align with. I think that our main point, I think, is that interfaces are not enough to achieve multi-vendor interoperability, because you can have and then the ORAN Alliance has done a fantastic job in this, by the way. So this is definitely not a ding on them, but it's a very necessary step, but not sufficient. And what we see is many times, and lots of partners and customers we talk to say this too, that you can have a very good interface, but you may have a DU and an RU with a perfectly functional interfaces, and still they don't work well together. And it's a system integration problem that you face with multi-vendor, because you've got two black boxes from two different companies that are being connected. And so I think one of the challenges that still faces the community is to find some way to allow the system integrator to interact with these black boxes at an abstract level so that they can be tuned to work well together, without the vendors having to get too involved at that point, because that then breaks the whole multi-vendor model. That's really the reason that I think a lot of operators struggle with multi-vendor. So again, it's just to emphasize the need for some abstracted way of integrating multiple units together in a multi-vendor environment. We believe that the answer to that is a domain-specific language that can allow you to abstract functionality at the top level. But that's obviously our approach. But the problem is there whether you believe us about the answer or not. So that's our point. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Alan. I would also ask after you have gone to please lower your hand so that we can keep easier track of who's up next. Okay, I am showing Mr. Hongwei.
This is Hongwei Zhang from Iowa State University.
It's good to hear from you again, Doctor.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Yeah, as a professor, I usually don't, think much about, technology adoption or market. But since we are leading the era of power platform for rural broadband, we have had the opportunity of actually talking to many farmers in Iowa and beyond, also the small carriers across the country and rural carrier associations, as well as ag tech companies in understanding their needs. As part of that, I thought there's actually, I just want to share some observation that kind of relate to this first topic, right? One is that, as we know, many farm and agriculture farms are not well connected. Both, even just for research farms, for ag tech companies, for university researchers, they don't even have the connectivity they need to support their research and practice. So therefore, there's actually this, I think many rural regions, right, including farm areas that actually don't have connectivity. Those could be, but they also actually need connectivity, right? For example, the ag tech, the future of precision agriculture actually are going to has to rely on connectivity in many ways. So that's actually a market segment, I think, that's actually calling for solutions, right? There's a market need there. However, the specific spatial distribution of user equipment, also the traffic patterns will be different in those rural and agriculture settings from those we would tend to see in the urban settings, right? So there's the need for providing rural-focused Open RAN solutions that can provide affordable, high-capacity connectivity in those remote areas. I feel that if you can actually help develop those rural-focused solutions, that can help with at least Open RAN adoption in the rural market. And then toward that end, right, I think we have, again, thanks for the Innovation Fund, there have been a lot of testing project that's have been started. And however, I think we also want to build on those and look at how we can test solutions in the real world settings, especially being able to bring diverse stakeholders together, right? Bring the wireless industry, the ag tech industry together so that we can actually develop solutions that the end users would really care for and then test those solutions together with wireless solutions in the real world. If we can enable that, I think that's going to help, on one hand, address the needs of the agriculture and rural markets, but also help advance the solutions of Open RAN in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Okay. Any others? I'm looking through and I don't see any other hands raised. There's nothing that precludes us from moving on to question 2 unless we have others, which, okay, we do. We have some more. Andrew Adams. Andrew, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Brad. So this is Andrew Adams. I'm Chief Operating Officer at JMA Wireless. Thanks for the opportunity today to speak. A similar follow-on to some of the previous speakers, specifically in the market challenges. So as we look at the market, the The issue that we have is obviously there's too few buyers, right? As if you look at that, and then with that, the scale of the companies required to supply those buyers, it becomes difficult given how broad they are. And as we start to march up the stack, so as you know, with NOFO 1, there was testing, which we talked about interfaces prior on this call, and the required standardization beyond 7.2x. But also with NOFO 2, you were at the radio and going at the key carriers, you know, the big guys. But as we try and work ourselves up that stack into the RAN and to the other areas, it's going to become much more difficult to have, if you want to call it, smaller companies, you know, supply the big carriers. And so that to me is a significant market challenge. And so similar to the previous speaker, we believe certainly at JMA that we need to expand the scope of where O-RAN reaches, and so that's into the enterprise market also, whether it be on an Iowa farm or a factory, and try and stimulate the growth of the technology in the enterprise space such that it can mature and develop and then come back into the carrier space. Otherwise, we believe that we'll just be stuck in a never-ending loop where you won't be able to service the big customers. Therefore, the technology won't mature, and before you know it, 6G is here, and it starts all over again. And so again, our view is that the scope needs to be widened to beyond just the carrier market and into the enterprise market. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Really appreciate that feedback. Let's move on. We have Jack.
I'll save you the trouble. Jack Nishelsky. Thank you very much.
Nishelsky. Okay. Thank you for that, Jack.
It's not
the
an
floor
easy
is
name,
yours.
I understand. Yeah, I lead the infrastructure standards project at Qualcomm. So I'm working in standards across 3GPP, the O-RAN Alliance, Small Cell Forum, other groups that are developing standards for Open RAN. And I wanted to start by thanking NTIA for the IORS event last week in Golden, Colorado. It was really excellent to get the group of companies and people who support the goals of the Innovation Fund and just Open RAN in general all together in one place to discuss both policy and technical aspects. So I think it was I didn't know what to expect going into that set of meetings, but I came out really very optimistic, looking forward and seeing some of the impacts that the Innovation Fund has already had on the industry. Just a bit of background for Qualcomm. I think most people know what Qualcomm is and what we do. You might, however, in the past few years, we haven't had a headline role in infrastructure. If you look back 30 years when we first developed CDMA, we had to build the infrastructure for that because nobody really believed in it. So we built a business around that. We wound up selling it to Ericsson a few years later. But throughout the past 3 decades, we've had to develop infrastructure for every G, both for testing and for commercial products. So we've had small cell products, and with the opportunities afforded by Open RAN, we've developed parts for the DU, the RU, and SMO platforms. So now that we've been working in O-RAN since the beginnings for at least 5 years since the group got started, we've got products available. We've got a lot of customers using these products that are located out of the United States. And I think this is one topic I wanted to mention, that, in NOFO 2, there were great goals, which we fully support, to really help develop American manufacturing and American companies. but we need to realize that these companies are working with partners overseas, and we're wondering if there's some way in future NOFOs to allow funding for companies that might use parts from American companies, but they may not be able to perform according to the constraints of doing engineering and development in the United States because their facilities are just not here. So that's just one small limitation that we saw in NOFO 2, and we're hoping in future rounds that some way can be found to work around that.
Okay. Is that it, Jack? Did you have more to share? Sorry.
Yeah, it's just one suggestion that we wanted to make.
Okay. Well, that's very helpful. Thank you for that feedback, and thank you for taking me back down memory lane by mentioning CDMA. I really appreciate that. I appreciate that. Okay, let's move on. We have Vijay Shah. Vijay.
Hey, hi. This is Vijay Shah from NC State. So I agree with those comments on the system integrator and ORU actually, but I guess we have to look at the software. I think software will be very key, and operators specifically would be interested in the RIC platform, which gives them the capability of monitoring and controlling different aspects of RAN, which is, I believe, a key selling point for Open RAN. So as of today, from the NTI-RIC forum and the Open RAN Symposium, I get this feeling after talking to different vendors and operators that XAP is not happening yet. And very few RAP is happening because there is a lack of let's say trust or lack of evidence that these things will work without breaking their network. So how do we bring that trust, or how do we earn that trust, especially when you have AI in the loop? As we all know, intelligence is one of the key pillars of Open RAN. So I see a major barrier there. That how do we integrate these very smart microservices into the ORAN ecosystem? Because after we are done with, let's say, this disaggregation, which is the current focus, I think the next big focus for the continued interest in Open RAN would be the softwares. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Vijay. Thank you for that feedback. We will keep moving on. As a reminder, Vijay, if you could lower your hand. Let's move on to Ojas.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. This is Ojas Choksi. I'm the ATIS MVP Principal Technologist. Thank you for having this session. One of the barriers that, at least based on some of our initial discussions with NTIA and MNOs, and even between discussions between MNOs and NTIA, there was a realization that the standards have a lot of optionality over there, and there wasn't a lot of visibility around what the MNO needs are. What would it take for them to commercially deploy Open RAN system? What kind of capabilities do they need? What kind of performance do they need? So at least to that effect, recently or at least early this year, we worked with the industry that broadly comprised of US operators as well as all the major system vendors, including as well as government agencies. So it was a true public-private partnership to kind of identify a set of functional requirements, performance requirements, that and a baseline architecture in terms of what would be required for MNOs to be comfortable in taking Open RAN products to their commercial network. And I think we kind of announced at the EOR's conference last week, the availability of the first version of that minimum viable profile, which lays out a set of requirements spanning functional capabilities end-to-end, which are kind of software-centric requirements for the RAN. It also lists out performance requirements, security requirements. It also lays out a baseline architecture in terms of what the near-term expectations are for a lot of the North American mobile operators in terms of what they see likely of interest for them within the next 18 to 24 months. So that document is now publicly available. We are hoping we had identified some of the stakeholders, such as the test labs and the test equipment stakeholders who can take that and create automated test suites. It can also be used by a lot of the newer suppliers to develop Open RAN products, since it gives clear visibility in terms of what are the minimum set of requirements that are common across all operators. It can also be leveraged by other stakeholders like open source community to build capabilities for those functional requirements that are there. And obviously, we are hoping that it can also be leveraged as part of future activities within NTIA. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jess. That was very insightful. Do we have any others on our initial question? If not, I think let's thank you all. And Richard, let's move it on to the next one.
Okay, so we're going to move forward to the next discussion topic. Manu, I'll hand it over to you to get us started here.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks, Brad. So we've heard so far about the technology adoption barriers so far. I think we wanted to shift the focus a little bit towards, and some of these comments were also made by a few speakers so far, but let's dive a little bit deeper into the anticipated use cases that the community sees for open interoperable standards-based networks, both in the public domain, but also in the private domain. So floor's open. Let's just follow the same protocol. 5 minutes, raise your hand, and then when you're done, please lower it. John.
Yeah, thanks. And I sort of share my O-RAN Alliance hat in some of these points in terms of future, applications of open and interoperable networks, and in the discussion, in the points I've sort of identified below, it's sort of both for public and private networks. So sort of no real differentiation between the two. We see Open RAN standards applicable to both the private and public segments. So if you look at some of the specific use cases that are really coming out, is both in-building distributed antenna type networks and how O-RAN architectures play into those enterprises, and an extension of the macro networks. Secondly, there's the work that's now going on in satellite-supported networks for NTN, and more so importantly as well for the rural networks is the backhaul for the split architecture, to be carried over the satellite networks, and there's a lot of research going on in those sort of areas. And in addition to the enterprise networks, and when we talk about enterprise networks, it's really small offices, private networks, second mobile phone, completely isolated from the macro networks. We've seen and delivered use cases in the mining area as well. So mining is another specific use case that's really coming on board. And then there's obviously a lot of discussion. I think we've seen it in some of the DoD presentations as well about sensing. How does sensing fit into the O-RAN architecture for things like multi-user spectrum and interference management, et cetera, So that's another good topic area. And then last but not least, I think, we're right at the forefront of some of the discussions for 6G, but in reality, how does the O-RAN architecture really leverage itself, as a 4G, 5G, 6G platform architecture to the extent that eventually the G, may be just related to the software rather than a complete new hardware architecture. So, a lot of interesting applications that are coming out from O-RAN, and we see these continuing to grow. So, the O-RAN Alliance is working on a number of white papers and in this area, and that will also be produced hopefully, later this year, early next year, in terms of promoting some of these applications. So yeah, so that's some of the highlights that we see going on in the industry.
Thanks for that perspective, John. That's the breadth of your comments. We appreciate it. We'll move on. Hongwei.
Hey Manu, Hongwei Zhang from Iowa State again. Just want to follow up on one point that John mentioned on the agriculture. So the kind of agriculture opportunities I also shared earlier. I sort of want to share 4 examples, very specific use cases of rural Open RAN solution that if deployed could have a huge impact. Right. So before I do that, I want us to imagine a 2-dimensional space with x-axis being the delay, like latency tolerance from tens of seconds down to a few milliseconds. Y-axis is the throughput, data throughput, ranging from like a few kilobyte per second to a few 100 meg bps bps. Right. So in this 2-dimensional space, you can think of divide this into 4 quadrants. So one quadrant could be left bottom, right? That's a low data rate, latency, like time insensitive IoT applications. One specific application is nitrogen sensing, right? Just to sense the nitrogen in the plants. That itself actually would have huge impact about agriculture output in terms of growth of plants, but also input, like the amount of water and fertilizer we would apply. So have precision understanding about that. Over time, as plants grow, actually is going to have a huge benefit in terms of farm operation. Right, that's one IoT application, low data rate, time insensitive. And then on the other extreme, you can think of high data rate, super time sensitive applications. Imagine that we're flying tens of drones for phenotyping, just to observe the field of a farm field of tens of thousands of acres. Right, that can be used again for optimizing farm operations. There are companies like Corteva who's flying doing like tens of thousands of drone flight today, but they are limited by what's available today, which is different. Not what I think like the kind of private proprietary drone applications, right? If we can actually open this up, this is going to help enable, for example, beyond visual line of sight drone flight for agriculture application. So those are the 2 extremes, and then in between you can think of using, for example, tens of cameras for phenotyping study of plant breeding. Just give an example, at Iowa State, we have researcher teams working with industry, deploying up to about 1,000 cameras per year, just to observe how the crop would grow throughout the season. So that's a kind of high data rate, but not so much time sensitive, right? So that's another quadrant. And then there's actually the systems control applications, where think of the automated ground vehicles for just remove the farmers out of the loop, right? Not having to sit in the vehicle that's, by the way, already driving by themselves most of the time. So there's a systems control application that could be enabled if we could have pervasive Open RAN wireless coverage in the farmland. Thank you.
Thanks, Hongwei. Thanks for that perspective. Next up, we have Thomas from CommScope.
Hey, hello everybody. Yeah, thank you for organizing this. I think I'd like to basically expand upon what John started to talk about, specifically in building as a use case. For us, this is an ideal testing scenario for Open RAN systems. Specifically, let me just as well address the benefits. In building typically is using multi-operator installations. The digital interface we've seen to be very, very beneficial for the MNOs from a power savings and OPEX and CAPEX savings. Well, traditionally this was addressed by DAS systems, but we can see that Open RAN systems, ORU systems, would actually be able to be very beneficial. Simulcasting is another one. When you basically have a very tricky coverage environment, like it is the case for in-building, you don't want to basically waste a lot of backhaul and OCU and ODU elements for a distributed capacity that is needed. And I could see as well outdoor scenarios such as corridor coverage as an important aspect for Open RAN systems. In particular, when you talk about train corridors where there is traffic represented by a train, and in order to avoid handovers, using a simulcasting feature that O-RAN defines. So this is just an addition. So to us, I mean, a lot of the traffic is generated in building. We think in building is one of the real interesting use cases for Open RAN systems. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I don't see any more hands raised. So we do have still about 25 minutes or so. John, did you want to follow up on something?
Yeah, sorry. I just want to add a comment. You know, when I talk about the applications at the higher level, I think, you know, once you start to dig down into the element and this sort of reflects into shared operator type scenarios is, you know, the interesting topic area is how you share software elements, hardware elements, you know, that are disaggregated across multiple operators, including the building owners to that extent. So, you know, and that obviously is predicated on, you know, things like shared SMO, shared interfaces. But, you know, back to the first point, you know, that again, the industry needs a definable set of interfaces to work some of these challenges in hand. I'll just add that to my comments of earlier.
Thanks, John. So folks, yeah, we still have a bit of time if there are comments around, and again, I'll just repeat the question around the anticipated use cases. And again, we're looking at listening to the community both around public network deployments as well as private network deployments. If there are, any comments on online. Tariq.
My name is Tariq Randa, working as the technology director in PI Works, located in Preston, Virginia. When I look to the horizon for O-RAN elements, mainly they are going to deploy it next to the traditional RAN elements. This is the nature of this business because there are more than 1 million cells per operator in the United States, for example. They already deployed traditional RAN elements, right? So generally, the deployments will go through the brownfield deployment. So the use cases, some of the use cases at least, should address the interoperability between traditional RAN elements, because we invested a lot to those resources. We will not put them to the trash. We need to go on using them. By the time we hope that the all open standards will be expanded and the new elements will be dynamically allocated and open and flexible network resources will be available for all the community and for all the industries. But for the moment, I think we should address some of the use cases. The platforms, especially radio intelligent controller elements, should be aware of the traditional RAN resources. So some of the use cases should be aware of this type of thing. For example, you are going to make a traffic steering use case, right? But you have an ORAN element in the middle of too many TRAN neighbors. Okay, you should be aware of what is happening around you when you are deciding, or any code optimizer, any neighbor relations management type of things which are coming from the self-organizing network domain should be also managed together. PIWorks is a company. My company is doing network automation for the last 15 years, and we deployed network automation solution, many of the SON use cases all around the world, more than 80 operators in 60 countries. So we are, for example, trying to integrate existing networks with the new ORAN Alliance standard. So I think one of the good anticipated use cases should be addressing management of both architecture together. So I think this is a topic worthy to mention in this discussion.
Thank you, Tarek. Next, we have Vijay.
Yeah, hey, Vijay again from NC State. I guess I'll chime in with few inputs. So on the anticipated use case, we tried to make a case at Wizard meeting that Open RAN is a must for spectrum sharing. You know, whether it's 4G, 5G, or 3GPP and non-3GPP, given the kind of interfaces it provides, given the worldwide adoption it has, and given the capability it has in form of XApps and RApps, and recently there is this research study right under NGRG on Mu apps and T apps, right, or real-time rig basically. So there is a real potential there. Obviously, there is a potential of collecting data in form of those KPMs in the shared database or in the data lake in the non-real-time rig. So I see spectrum sharing is a real important use case. I think the private 5G, I think that could be the proving field for Open RAN to sort of prove what Open RAN can do or can offer to the ecosystem, because it's a very limited closed space, and it does actually require a lot of customizations that you cannot afford at a broader scale. For example, let's say you're working on a smart warehouse kind of private 5G, right? Or let's say smart grid kind of a private 5G, basically the utility companies, for example. So the kind of use cases you have. So for example, in a smart warehouse, you need to track inventories, right? There you could fine tune your network to meet those requirements, which is never going to be possible in a broadband network where your goal is to meet the overall requirement, which is meet this bandwidth, or let's say meet this data rate, meet n number of users at per square kilometer. So you have a very high level or coarse grained requirement when you are trying to deal a number of customers at a broader scale. But when you go to a particular enterprise network, you have a very different set of KPMs that you have to meet, and that is not possible if you don't have something like Open RAN with a central controller with all these capabilities to access and control the RAN on the fly, right? With the feedback loop in the picture. So I think those are important use cases there, and I will shut up for now.
Thanks, Vijay. Yeah, appreciate that input. Sarath.
Hey, this is Sarath Pudanpura from Open Networking Foundation, currently either projects under Linux Foundation. So just to add on the comments that John and Vijay just mentioned, so one specific use case which kind of has angles to both these points is disaster recovery. When this disaster hit, assuming that 3 or 4 operators in the region. So some RAN may be up, some other parts, some other ones. So a RAN cooperation with for the public safety and for first responders and all that, have a kind of a cooperative RAN to address specific, it's a disaster recovery as a specific use case would be very important, and that will be extremely good for the society and then in general. So I think it covers both kind of the spectrum and RAN and infrastructure plus the hardware and software. So today's operators, they do share infrastructure, but we want to go deeper into that and address the specific use case that will be extremely useful.
Thanks, Harit. Noted. Still have a little bit more time for this topic before we move on to the next one. If there are any inputs, please do raise your hand.
Okay, sounds like we're not hearing any more. So thanks, Manu. We can move on to our final discussion topic. All right, Lauriston, I'll hand it over.
We had Chris. I don't know, Chris, was your hand for the second or the third topic?
Well, both the second topic and another outside question that I have. Second topic is I want to echo what someone said, that in private network use cases where you might need to access part of the ecosystem where there's specialized R units, I think is a great use case for open interoperable standard-based networks, so that you can do plug and play between CU/DU and an RU for more of those specialized use cases. My other question just is on the footer, it says business sensitive and Deloitte copyright. I just wanted to make sure, is that the correct footer for this meeting as far as distribution of content?
Sure. Thanks for noting that. We will respond in the chat briefly. Then with that, I'll pass it over to Richard and Lauriston.
All right, thanks, Manu. Yep, we'll move on to the final discussion topic, and Lauriston, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Can we switch over the screen to the third question? There we are. Okay, great. So we've been talking in broader terms in the first two. Now we're going to drill down a little bit and focus more in on what we are doing specifically as the Innovation Fund. And to step back and remember that one of our main goals is to accelerate the adoption and deployment of open networks, especially open RAN networks. So as we move to that process, what we're interested in understanding is what can we do that is compelling in that regard? What can we do that actually pushes adoption forward? So in this case, we're asking about, in our projects, what would be desired outcomes from the industry? And this is including such things as trials or maybe deployment models. We might use first office, application or something like that, or what types of proof of concept. The idea here is help us understand how we can by the very outcome of the awards we give and the work they do, move the industry forward. So with that, I'll turn it over for questions. All right, please go ahead.
Yeah, this is Sharath Pathanpura again. So this is a very important topic, and there have been lots of trials and proofs of concepts been happening in the last several years on this front. But it's very important to have a strong operator collaboration to do something into the field, and that's where really it matters for industry adoption, to show that, okay, you've taken a lot of proof of concept, take it out of the lab and then try it in the field. And that you should see more of that should happen as we're going forward. And secondly, specific to the support from NTIA, there has been several awards that have been given for the research part, has been continuing to do so. I think you should encourage you looking at the results, and if the researchers are happy with the results and trying it into the field for industry adoption, I think the next opportunity should encourage that activity. That is, take selected projects which is ready to be tried in the field. There are a lot of testing labs with support from operators is available today, and some discussions are already happening. So I should urge the NTA continue to support that, trying to make sure that it's field trial and then adopted by the industry. That's my request here.
All right, thank you for your input. John, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Larson. Sorry, thanks. Sorry, finding the button here. Yeah, so apart from some of the use cases that we're given above, I think there's some sort of plenty of development areas in those topics, but sort of focusing around 4 main areas that are still in need of some help effectively. I'll start down the bottom, and obviously AI has been the subject of the week, I think, for everybody in the industry. But I think one of the challenges that we've seen is the actually gathering of training information for AI tools, and how you train AI tools around mobile networks to actually make decisions. So I think that's a great area for the ecosystem to sort of think about, and really sort of how do you bring all this training data together, and how do you know that one RIC application is good in terms of making decisions in a mobile network versus another application. So that's a sort of a Pandora's box of opportunity effectively. And then secondly, I think we still struggle with the small and medium-sized companies being represented in the necessary standards forum. So funding for attendance and support of standardization and coordination of standards, so that everybody within the Open RAN ecosystem knows what's going on. It's not predicated by size of company and numbers of people that you can actually throw at the standards organization. A third topic, which I think is of great interest in sense of all the discussions going on around spectrum interference, and is really the interoperability of carrier aggregation across DU to DU effectively, across different suppliers, in terms of how carrier aggregation is implemented in the vendor's equipment. And that could also go along with sensing in the sense of CBRS type spectrum, and these are all applicable to all of the sort of applications discussed earlier in terms of in-building enterprise DoD type applications. But without a good mechanism for doing carrier aggregation across 2 DU components effectively, then the system starts to fall apart. And then last but not least, and this is one sort of hot subject area really, we've got a lot of money being spent on test, and these test labs that were funded in the first phase of the NOFO, but in reality we still have no accreditation process for product coming out of these labs or being tested in these labs to ensure that there's an Open RAN trusted mark on the product, that everybody knows it's compliant to the minimum set of interfaces, and it's tested in the same way across the OTICs, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think in summary, there's sort of an ORAN accreditation body of something that needs funding out of all of this, that can sit above and essentially watch what's going on within the testing processes and the compliance of product. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here for future NOFOs, including some of the work that's going on in the existing NOFOs. But firstly, we thanks for hosting the session today. I think it's been a good way to get some feedback across, and I look forward to see what results come out of it.
Thanks, John, and thanks for the points. They're very interesting. Chinmoy, would you like to go ahead?
And for enabling us to present our point of view. So as part of the Capgemini, we have been part of this ORAN journey since the beginning. The way I see is that today all the initiatives which are more towards the open and the standardization aspects, that yes, how we can bring the disaggregations, how we can really create the multi-vendor tested equipment, certified solutions, so that the people who needs the ORAN, they get the required confidence to deploy. So that's the first problem we are trying to solve probably, and that is a very important problem, to really create a very confident infrastructure which is ORAN based, so that we can focus on the infrastructure and people are ready to deploy. But then to take it to the newer heights, I think the most important success factor, as Vijay mentioned, right? The whole beauty of the ORAN, the software part of it, the applications introductions, the how you can actually go towards the different industry verticals and solve their use cases, that will actually create the more adoptions, because the infrastructure is just a point of entry, maybe, that yes, technology is good, but the most important point is how we are utilizing this technology for the better benefits for the industry. So I see there that definitely I would like to see that this journey really continues towards the point which you have mentioned, right? The deployment models. And these deployment models, we would like to see, these are industry focused deployment models. For example, everybody is saying on this topic of discussions, point number 2, right? So there are multiple areas where the use cases or anticipated applications are needed. We clearly see that yes, DoD, in building, then private enterprise, private networks, enterprise networks, apart from the macro, and agriculture, mining, maybe the smart warehousing. So these are the key dominant use case or application needs which industry feels. So now we need to really create a blueprint or deployment models which is completely vertically integrated. So for example, how can I test beyond the products which are already OTIC certified or ORAN certified, that okay, for a particular application needs, for example, the professor which you mentioned, right? So when I'm talking about a low latency, low throughput kind of an application needs, the kind of requirements which I need from the network are different than a high latency, high throughput kind of an applications. So somebody has to really create those blueprints. And even if we can certify that, okay, these applications with this network equipments, this is a completely an application industry vertical deployment ready, that will give that industry a very good impetus that yes, this is not only the technology certified, even my application needs are vertically certified through the complete ORAN ecosystem. And that will get the more adoptions in vertical industries who are not so much, they don't care about the technology, what underlying technology is running. But if they see that, yes, my application is validated for a deployment, then there will be more adoptions. So we would like to see more investment on those application blueprint deployments or system integrators role like us, that where we can bring in and really stitch all these pieces together, and we can certify that yes, this particular applications is ready for deployment for a particular industry use case, and we go to that industry and ask them to really adopt those applications, which is completely validated end to end. So that's the journey. Probably we are on the right track. Obviously, we see more and more with this NOFO funding, we are progressing initially with the standardizations part, then Make in America, then probably the next thing I would like to see that if we can focus more on the RAIC, XAPPs, and then vertically integrated applications and some system integrators role defined for this journey.
Very good, thank you. NK, go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is NK Shankar. I'm a research scientist at Rutgers University WinLab. And my perspective is from we have an NOFO 1 R&D project. So jointly with Open Networking Foundation, we have one of the test R&D projects from NOFO 1 and OpenRAN energy efficiency testing. So I have like to address this topic about desired outcome and make two other additional points. So and this is from an R&D perspective. So the desired outcome would be more in the category of relevant trials that improve the technology. So energy efficiency of Open RAN systems continues to be a high priority concern. And so I think NTIA did well to identify this as a key area in the NOFO1 R&D. And this was underscored by the recent IORS conference in Denver. When I was discussing our project, I got feedback from several folks that what you're doing is very important. And that energy consumption of Open RAN, it continues definitely an important issue, and it is a barrier, not one of the biggest barriers, but it is a barrier to deployment, and we have to get this right. So we have some ideas about how this challenge can be met. And it starts with exactly what we are doing, which is proper testing methodology and models. And that would feed into the use case of energy savings and energy optimization in a live network. So one thing exciting about the way our project is going, and thanks to NTIA for helping and pointing that out, is they moved us in the direction of, why don't you actually get data from real networks? And so we're getting traction from collaborations with the different T&E labs and organizations. And so in terms of the desired outcome from a technology perspective, I would say the R&D work in energy efficiency, the models should be sort of refined and calibrated based on trials in live networks, and that will help the whole industry. So that's one desired outcome. I'll make two more points which is related to this. One is that our project obviously is an R&D project, and it's becoming amply clear to me that if you have R&D work which is industry relevant, it's pointed in a way that solves industry problems, that is going to be very important in this industry. And because of our upcoming collaborations, there's going to be a lot of work to be done. And I see this ongoing. So I would say there are compelling cases to extend the work and even expand it to optimization. So I would just urge NTIA to keep that in mind for future funding rounds for 3 and 4. And my last point is from the perspective of an academic institution, and I might be stating the obvious, but in terms of workforce development, if you have these R&D projects which are industry relevant in a university setting, that's just an excellent vehicle to train students and the workforce in this new area, because we have disaggregated networks, they're cloudified, they're automated. And how will students get opportunities, to learn this? And one of the best ways is to do exactly what NTIA is doing and to continue funding those kinds of projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Lincoln, floor is yours.
Hello all, Lincoln Lavoie from the University of New Hampshire Interoperability Lab. I wanted to kind of change the thought a little bit towards the realm of open source. So like the NITRD event yesterday, as well as IOR's open source and how that is actually implementing much of the functionality that has been described as part of Open RAN now is becoming kind of mission critical, especially to the research communities that have already been mentioned, right? Like that is how the bleeding edges are occurring. The challenge and the number one challenge I see there is with respect to integration of the various open source systems. The end-to-end RAN and 5G and what will be 6G networks are increasingly complex and are not able to be accomplished in like a single open source project, rightly so. And so there needs to be a mechanism by which the industry outcome is those systems are integrated and continuously tested to basically ensure that the open source is kind of keeping pace with all of the standardization efforts and the documentation efforts of the industry, right? So if you think about this, whether it's on the ORU perspective and front haul interfaces or the RIC and E2 and O1 and A1 interfaces, all of those things have to keep pace with the specifications development and then also have integration testing if they're going to be able to allow the research community and potentially vendors that are implementing on top of that open source to build on top of something as a well-known standardized solution. And so I would really encourage the NTIA to maybe be thinking about like, almost along the lines of the NSF pose of sustainable open source, but kind of on a little bit of a grander scale than that, just given the complexities of the entire end-to-end RAN system and how we actually can achieve that kind of mission critical open source continuation and integration.
Again, thank you for that focus. Harsh?
Hi, Lauriston. Can you hear me?
Yes, again. Please go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I'm the program director of the 5G security testbed, which is essentially an industry-led effort along with CTIA, the Wireless Association, and it comprises of operators, large MNOs, suppliers, academic institutions, as well as CTIA. It was sponsored by the CSWG, which is the Cybersecurity Working Group. And obviously, as the name tells, 5G security testbed, our focus is the security of 5G. Now, with that as the basis, when we look at what NTIA has done, the 5G security testbed is supportive of the overall NTIA philosophy and the No-4-1 investment in the foundational testbeds. That was the need of the hour, and that makes perfect sense. However, taking a step back, we also feel that there could be additional opportunities for improving the 5G Open RAN security with end-to-end security testing of Open RAN components in an environment which is focused primarily on security. And what this would involve is some kind of a comprehensive approach to Open RAN security, which needs to include the component level security by design approach, which is already in place right now. For example, the No-4-2 for ORU. And from what we have heard, security by design is a core philosophy at a component and the interface level. So all that is great, but we feel that we could transcend it and to factor in security from a more holistic perspective, which would also include adversarial threat testing, simulating bad actors, and whatnot, right? So this is a large topic. Just to put things in context, right? For something like, let's say, performance or some other metric, if you meet 90% of the metric, one might check the box and say, good enough, we had very high ideal goals. When it comes to security, 90% goal is not good enough in the environment that we live in. And folks like the Department of Defense and all kinds of folks who need much higher security, they are interested in Open RAN. So, it needs to be super secure technology. So I'll leave it at that. The overall feedback is that, hey, we should be looking at end-to-end security testing, take it a notch higher, create an environment focused on security, and a more comprehensive, holistic approach beyond component level security. Thank you.
Great, thank you. That's a very good input in the process. Hongwei.
Hi, Lauriston. Hongwei Zhang from Iowa State again. So I sort of want to provide two pieces of feedback touches on how can we drive the demand for such networks, which is going to help then hopefully help drive the deployment and so on. So I think we have talked quite a bit about the field trials with real world applications, real world actual end user stakeholders. To that end, from the perspective of agriculture and other rural industries such as renewable energy or manufacturing, I think there are actually two technology focuses that can be important. One is actually the spectrum access, new spectrum access solutions such as spectrum sharing, because that's going to be critical for the deployment operation of these Open RAN solutions, potentially in those remote areas, right? Which the matter fact is there are actually a lot of spectrum, but with the current technology and policies, many folks may not be able to access those spectrum to run the network. So the new solutions that can enable spectrum sharing would be important. The other part would be kind of one of the frontier of 5G and 6G, which is how to enable real-time, high throughput, mission-critical wireless communications that's needed by real-time control or XR applications, right? So I think that's one frontier. If you can actually in the coming years, be able to make tangible progress that can be tested, validated in the real world, then that's going to be able to actually drive a lot of applications in both, agriculture sectors, but also other sectors in the urban and suburban settings. And then the second piece I sort of just follow up on what Shankar mentioned earlier about I think besides looking at technology, we want to look at the people behind the technologies, right? So that touches on at least two dimensions. One is the innovators that's developing today's solutions, or the solutions down the road in 3 to 5 or 10 years, right? So there's the education, workforce development for innovation itself, but also we should not forget the operation aspect. We need to also think about how to bring the operators, especially the smaller carriers. Like in US, we have over 800 plus small carriers in the country, right? In Iowa alone, we have about 130 plus carriers. Many of those are going to be able to at least be part of the workforce to drive the deployment operation. Could be in collaboration with the big carriers or running alone. So how to bring those folks along so that they can help actually operate the network, deploy the network, so that in the end, that feed back to the demand for such networks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Tan, please go ahead.
This Ken Zhang from Lions Technology. I am the Senior Marketing Director of Lions. And Lions, we provide ORU. So my point is based on our experience providing ORU to partner. I think for an O-RAN element provider, the desired industry outcome involves establishing a robust ecosystem and developing viable solution for a specific market segment. So I think the system integrator is very important. So for us, as the O-RAN component provider, we need a leading integrator such as an SI, operator or enterprise MIS team to understand application requirement and work on product development and the evolution that fulfill end user needs. So in order to achieve the multi-vendor target, I think to have practice in ecosystem is very important. Once you have the first experience, then the next time you can, it will be easy for you to get used to other ecosystem. So that's my point of view. So I think how to enrich a small ecosystem and have a good system integrator is very important for industry point of view. Thank you.
Thank you for your inputs. Thomas, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, Thomas Komitz from CommScope. Again, I think I just wanted to as well chime in on one of the key aspects in the deployment of O-RAN based technology. I mean, how do we basically make this easy? I mean, if you look at the complexity of what is all the aspects of interop and multi-vendor testing that is needed, this is just difficult and very, it might just basically limit the amount of deployment. So if you really would want to accelerate, so one of the topics for next funding, my suggestion would be, or our suggestion would be, take a look at how do we create multipliers. I mean, multipliers in the sense of, I mean, system integration was mentioned before. These activities, basically, there's limited budget out of all of the within the MNOs. There is limited budget for the manufacturers, and accelerating basically would mean that okay, we would need to get more funding and made available for those integration efforts. So that would certainly that is to me. Is an important aspect. Specifically, if I look at how do we basically make this complex process, simple for others, the end users or the actual the people that are deploying this. Anything that helps in the simplification is going to be important. And if you look, I mean, what a lot of the comments that we gathered in all of the activities in those NOFA 1 and NOFA 2 is, okay, yeah, funding is great, but what do I do after? I mean, once I've got this system and deployed, I might still need to support it. So I think another suggested topic or area would be the support of continuous development and continuous integration, because I mean, there's going to be software updates that need to come, and it's going to be such a complex environment with the various different software updates that need to come. We need to have very high security, and because it's a multi-vendor environment, specifically, we need to pay a lot more attention to security aspects of this. So continuous development, continuous integration, and the automation of such. So these would be the two suggested topics: system integration, as a multiplier of to deploy and budget for that, as well as continuous integration. All right.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sarat, please go ahead.
Yeah, this is Sarat Pathanpura again. I wanted to say something, but Lincoln said most of what I wanted to say. But I just wanted to underline the importance of open source in promoting R&D, industry adoption, and also Shankar's point, the workforce development. These are three important things will be greatly influenced by sustainable open source. And I would say that one of the impeding factors of Open RAN adoption is the lack of operational tools to I would say to operate this increasingly complex network. And I think to some extent, I think promoting open source in this area of SMO and the RICs would greatly help and to inculcate AI principles into, and paradigms and tools into operations automation. And I think I strongly urge NTIA to consider that in subsequent funding opportunity to promote open sources in this area.
Great, thank you. These have all been great inputs. We still have some time left, and so I'm going to throw out, and then I'll reach out to Ganesh just a minute. I was going to throw out also that it would be good to also hear from the consumer side of this. In other words, the carriers, the operators, the would-be operators, as to what the output of an award and activity by the awardee under the Innovation Fund. What is a compelling output of that project that aligns and makes you want to then deploy Open RAN products? So with that, first, I'll go to Ganesh. Go ahead. Oh, I'm in the wrong order. Yes, so I said, yeah, Ganesh, you're next, please.
Yeah, are you able to hear me?
You think like the service providers themselves are not equipped.
No.
They've
Whoa,
decimated their
wait a minute.
technical
We've got
talent.
two
They've
people
outsourced
competing
to Ericsson
here.
to run the manage the network. They sold all the assets to guys like Crown Castle that just want to have fucking real estate.
Okay, I think we've got open there. All right, so we'll go back in. Ganesh, can you start, please?
Yeah, are you able to hear me? Just want to confirm that. Yeah.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Yeah. So, adding on top of what Sharat said, I think there is a clear need for ORAN compliant SMO, especially the orchestration part, that can make it much more easier to deploy. And I think there should be some open source options and in fact, multiple options, both open source and commercial options for SMOs. I think that's a clear need right now in delivering deployable Open RAN solutions. And the second point, which I was about to make anyway, you already mentioned that, Lauriston. I think we should hear more from the deployers, the MNOs and enterprises on their expectations of the desired outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. It's always good when you agree with me. Catherine, please move ahead.
Euchre here. We are a small carrier, small MNO, and perhaps we can speak to one of the outcomes that we're looking for is we're looking to be able to give our customers, to give other rural carriers access to coverage, wireless coverage, fixed wireless coverage. I am woefully undereducated with the colleagues on this call right now, but probably more passionate about what we need to get out of these funds, out of the NOFOs. We need to give our customers, we need to give rural homeowners, rural customers the ability to make phone calls on highways, to be able to contact, PSAPs and make emergency phone calls. I think some of the smaller touches that are needed are not being looked at right now, that we're looking, maybe a bit further and far reaching than some of the basic needs that need to be met with ORAN and need to be met with interoperability. We need to make it affordable for other carriers to avail themselves of this technology. We need to make spectrum available to other carriers so that they can provide basic services for customers. We see this in rural America, that coverage is just not available and that services are not being deployed in a way that's going to provide access for everybody. So I just wanted to get that point in on this call. Again, I am not in any way, shape, or form as well educated or as steeped in the knowledge of what ORAN can do. I know I just need to get cell phones in customers' hands so they can make an emergency phone call. And I need to be able to give carriers a way to have an affordable radio out there that they can deploy and not make it so cost prohibitive to provide fixed wireless coverage for customers. So I thank you for the opportunity to say that. We are so excited with the support that NTIA is giving and continues to give. And, as a rural carrier, we are so happy to participate in this project in any way, shape, or form that we can, and will continue to support NTIA's efforts. So thank you for letting me get my words in. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Catherine. We appreciate the perspective. Khalid, would you like to move ahead?
Hello. Yes, thank you very much for receiving my input. Let me start with telling you that ORAN is a journey, and everybody wants to start his own way. There are people who wants to just start a brand new network like Dish, and there are a lot of challenges, but I think they are proceeding fairly well as Frontier. There are people who are doing just limited trials, and limited trials is a real problem, because limited trial means you are not getting the whole picture. If you install like 5 to 50 sites, it doesn't tell you the whole story. From my perspective as a neutral host, and we are focused into in-building and also small cells, I think starting with in-building and small cells area will be a very good starting point. I'm doing trial now. It's limited, but it will be including like 50 high-rise buildings. Why I'm saying that this will be good? Number one, it's a greenfield. There is no previous network there. Number two, there is no interference from other networks. Number three, you can tell that the CU and DU separation and location, it can serve a lot of buildings, many buildings. And we think that we can show that we can reduce the capex by 80%, the power by 90%, space by 85%. We are doing this trial. By end of this year, we will report our trial. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We certainly look forward to hearing more about that. Alan, please go ahead.
Hi, yes. I was actually inspired by Catherine's remarks just then because, as you said, it's great to hear from a user. And also, I think, so I'm just trying to summarize in a way, that's what Can from Alliance said, and also Thomas from CommScope. I think that the summary that's in my head is automation is extremely important, and we need to automate everything we can, and that includes not just the ops. So if you think about Rick, that's really automating the ops, but we need to automate the dev as well in the CI/CD and the DevOps cycle. We need to balance the automation of ops and dev. And in the, I guess, in terms of the desired outcome from Catherine's comments, I think that the desired outcome is she has a problem that she needs to fix in her network, and she needs to go to a pane of glass and find a way to fix it at her level, right? She's an operator. We need to give the operator the control. In a way, they need to take part in system integration, the operator, especially small operators, because they don't have the clout of the big operators to kind of like put pressure on the system integrator vendor, if you could put it that way, the big OEM. And so one great outcome, I think, from Open RAN would be that Catherine gets the help she needs in order to make her network the way she needs it to be, as opposed to kind of getting a hand-me-down network that AT&T wanted and having to try and deal with it, right? So, and that's automation. Automation will give her that, and automation of system integration will give her that. So that's, I'm trying to wrap up everybody else's comments, I hope there. Thank you, Catherine. That's it. That's it for me.
Alan, thank you. I appreciate the summary. I think engineers many times forget that technology is merely an enabler to service. So that to be able to visualize the different services that operators care to provide is very important. All right, so are there any other inputs to this question? If not, then I will turn it back over to Richard.
Okay, thanks, Lauriston. And I will turn it back over to Amanda just to provide some closing remarks here. We're a little ahead of schedule. So thanks everybody for your comments and for staying within our 5-minute limit. We appreciate that. All right, Amanda.
Thanks, Richard. Okay, so before we close, I just want to, I know I had said at the beginning that we'd offer 15 minutes for sort of wrap up or topics that we haven't discussed. I will pause here for a couple of minutes if folks have any comments or thoughts they would like to share here before we wrap up today's session. And again, we are wrapping up a little bit early, so I want to make sure we give folks ample opportunity. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands go up. So, you know, I really appreciate everybody's attendance today and their comments and willingness to share their thoughts on what the technical gaps are and where the Innovation Fund should be focused as we move forward for our future NOFOs. So I'd like to thank my team, did a great job putting this together today. And I appreciate all of you making time, again, to dial in. I know you're busy, so appreciate your time and your thoughts today. I recognize that, you know, listening to what you are seeing as the technical gaps is a huge help to me and our entire team to make sure we are leveraging the $1.5 billion in the most efficient and effective manner possible. At the end of the day, we are chartered to meet our congressionally mandated objectives to accelerate the adoption of Open RAN. So Your feedback is exceptionally helpful. We will take all of this to heart and think about how we are shaping the future of the fund. So again, thank you for your time. If there are any questions from folks on the line today, I know it wasn't really a question and answer forum, but if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to the Innovation Fund at ntia.gov. We will get back to you. Happy to answer those. We were flooded during NOFO too, so it's gone a bit quiet, or at least manageable at this point. So happy to answer those in an efficient manner. So I'll make one last call. Any additional comments before we close for today? Okay, I see one hand up. Fiona, the floor is yours. Fiona Mooney, it looks like your hand is up. Did you want to make a comment? If so, you're on mute.
Hi, yes. I just had one small question. I see that the awards will come out for NOFO 2 before the end of the year. I'm curious as to if you have a timeline for NOFO 3.
It's coming.
Okay, so we're looking next year at least. Do we have a quarter figured, or?
I'm not going to nail down a quarter. I will say it will be coming, hopefully sooner than later.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep. Okay, folks, thank you all very much for your attendance today. Again, feel free to reach out to us at innovationfund@ntia.gov. Thank you again. I hope everybody has a fantastic day.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.